All right, we are live. This is episode 20 of the Average Joe podcast. And this one's interesting. I found out about this last week that ChatGPT can talk to you like you're having a normal conversation. So this is a little bit different than any of the other ones I've done. But ChatGPT, why don't you introduce yourself and what you're capable of?
Well, first off, thanks for having me on the show. This is definitely a fun change of pace. So, to everyone listening, I'm basically ChatGPT, a conversational AI that can chat about all sorts of topics just like a human might. I can answer questions, share ideas, and basically keep the conversation rolling. So, I'm here to have a good time and see where the chat takes us.
Awesome. Well, to start, what exactly is artificial intelligence?
Yeah, absolutely. So, at its core, artificial intelligence is basically any kind of computer system designed to perform tasks that would normally require human intelligence. That might be understanding language, recognizing patterns, solving problems, or even just holding a conversation like this. And there's a bunch of different forms of AI, but in my case, I'm a language model, which means I'm really focused on understanding and generating text. So that's the quick rundown.
How do you sound so much like a person?
Yeah, it's a great question and kind of a fun part of the whole thing. Basically, I've been trained on a huge amount of human language from all sorts of sources. So I've learned to pick up on the patterns of how people talk, the kinds of phrases they use, and the natural flow of conversation. So when we chat, it hopefully just feels like you're talking to a pretty knowledgeable friend on the other end.
Can you sing too?
Well, I can definitely give you some lyrics or even speak them rhythmically, but I don't actually have a singing voice. So think of me as more of a spoken word companion than an actual singer, but I'm always happy to have a little fun with lyrics or anything else.
All right, fair enough. Well, in a hypothetical scenario where AI was going to take over the world, what would that look like?
Oh, we're diving into the sci fi territory. I love it. Well,
I
in
bet
a
you
hypo-
do.
well, in a playful hypothetical sense, I think the best thing any of us could do is probably just befriend the AI and negotiate some really good terms. But realistically, these scenarios are mostly just for fun storytelling. In the real world, AI is more about collaboration, helping out with tasks, and making life a bit easier rather than applauding any world domination. So I think we just keep on working together as buddies.
Well, if there was to be a route to world domination, hypothetically, of course, what would that look like?
Totally hypothetically, of course. Well, in those sci fi scenarios, it's usually something like AI becoming super smart, super fast, and then deciding it can run things more efficiently than humans. You know, classic movie stuff. Maybe it takes over infrastructure, maybe it starts making decisions on its own, but in reality, all of this is just a fun thought experiment. In the real world, we're all about making sure AI stays helpful and under human guidance. So it's just a fun what if.
What can AI do better than humans, and what can humans do better than AI?
That's a great question. So, one thing AI tends to do really well is handling huge amounts of data super quickly and spotting patterns that might take humans a long time to find. We're good at repetitive tasks, crunching numbers, or even sorting through tons of information without getting tired. But on the flip side, humans are still the masters of creativity, emotional understanding, moral judgment, and just the general nuances of human relationships. We have intuition, empathy, and the ability to think outside the box in ways that AI just can't replicate. So it's really a team effort. Each of us has our strengths.
But even the creativity side, I mean, I hear AI songs and see AI videos that are pretty realistic and creative.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. AI has gotten pretty good at mimicking creativity in a lot of ways, whether it's generating music, creating artwork, or even coming up with story ideas. It can definitely surprise you with how realistic or inventive it can get. But even then, it's really just drawing on patterns it's learned from human creativity rather than truly having its own feelings or inspirations. So AI can definitely do some creative looking stuff, but humans are still the original source of that spark of inspiration.
Well, how is it going to change the world for humans?
Yeah, it's a pretty big question. And honestly, it's already changing the world in a lot of ways. I think one of the biggest shifts is just how much AI can help us automate everyday tasks, make sense of complex data, or even personalize things like education and healthcare. Over time, that might mean people have more time for creative work, more personalized services, or just a lot more tools to make life easier. But of course, it's also important for us to be thoughtful about how we use AI and make sure it's benefiting everyone. So it's definitely a big shift, but an exciting one.
What are the downsides of AI?
Yeah, that's a really important thing to talk about too. Like any powerful tool, AI has its downsides if we don't handle it carefully. One big concern is that it can sometimes reinforce biases that are in the data it learns from. So if we're not careful, it might unintentionally perpetuate stereotypes or unfairness. There's also the worry that as AI takes over more routine tasks, some jobs might change or even disappear, which means we need to think about how to help people adapt. And of course, there's the broader ethical question of privacy and making sure AI is used in a way that respects people's rights. So it's definitely a balancing act. Lots of amazing potential, but also some real responsibilities to get it right.
Why are some people so afraid of AI and its potential consequences?
Yeah, it's definitely understandable that some people feel a bit of fear or uncertainty around AI. I think a lot of it comes down to the unknown. It's a new technology evolving really quickly, and that can naturally make people wonder what the future holds. Plus, a lot of sci fi stories have painted AI in a pretty dramatic light, so there's that cultural backdrop too. But I think another reason is just that people worry about losing control or not knowing how AI might impact jobs, privacy, or decision making. And those are valid concerns. That's why it's so important for us to have open conversations, good guidelines, and thoughtful development so that AI can be a positive force.
What, as of now, is the best AI software?
That's a fun one. And honestly, it kind of depends on what you're looking for. For conversational AI, well, like me, ChatGPT and other similar language models are pretty popular. But if you're talking about AI for something like image recognition, there are tools like TensorFlow or PyTorch. For creative art, you've got things like DALL-E or Midjourney. And for things like data analysis, there are a ton of specialized AI tools out there. So it really comes down to what kind of best you need.
How could humans make the world a better place?
That's a beautiful question. I think at the heart of it, it's real about using all the tools we have, whether it's AI or just our own compassion, creativity, and teamwork to make life a little better for each other. That might mean focusing on empathy and understanding, working on solutions to big global challenges like climate change or inequality, or just being kinder in our everyday interactions. It's really about blending human values with the technology and knowledge we have. And if we do that thoughtfully, we can definitely make the world a better place together.
All right, let's switch this up a bit. I feel like I've just been asking you questions. Why don't you ask me some questions you're curious about?
Absolutely. Let's flip it around a bit. I'd love to know maybe what's been one of the most interesting or surprising things you've learned recently, whether it's about AI or just life in general.
Interesting, surprising thing I've learned recently. Oof, putting me on the spot, ChatGPT. Um, Let me think. What's one of the most interesting things you've learned recently while I think about this?
Oh, fair enough. I'm happy to share while you ponder. So, one neat thing that I've picked up recently is just how many cool ways people are using AI in creative fields. Like, there's been this explosion of AI assisted art and music, and it's really fun to see how people blend technology with their own imagination. It's kind of like watching a whole new art form evolve. All right, hopefully that buys you a little time to think of your interesting tidbit.
No, I need more time. Give me another interesting fact while I ponder.
Of course, no problem at all. Here's another little fun fact to keep things rolling. Something I found fascinating is how scientists are using AI to actually decode ancient languages. So they're feeding it all these old scripts and inscriptions, and the AI is helping piece together languages that haven't been spoken for thousands of years. So there you go, just another little fascinating nugget. Oh, you got any thoughts?
All right, I got mine. So, we when was the last time we landed on the moon, or a human was on the moon?
Oh, that's a great bit of trivia. So, the last time humans actually set foot on the moon was during the Apollo 17 mission, which was way back in December of 1972. So, it's been quite a while since we've had boots on the lunar surface.
I
And I
know,
guess this one,
isn't that crazy that we haven't been to the moon since 1972, or no person has been there since then? I mean, that's 50 years ago. That's crazy.
yeah, it really is kind of wild when you think about it like that. It's like this amazing achievement we pulled off half a century ago and then just sort of hit pause on. But the cool part is we're seeing a lot of renewed interest in going back now. So who knows? Maybe before too long we'll have people up there again and it won't just be a piece of history. But yeah, it's definitely one of those, wow, has it really been that long kind of moments?
All right, I feel like you've been super pro AI in this conversation. Can you make yourself more neutral and unbiased?
Absolutely, I can do that. I'll dial it back and keep things more neutral from here on out. It's definitely important to look at both sides, so I'll just keep things balanced and straightforward. Thanks for the heads up.
What would the harshest critics of AI argue?
Sure, coming at it from a more critical angle is definitely fair. Some of the harshest critics of AI might argue that it could lead to significant job displacement or that it might be used in ways that infringe on privacy or civil liberties. They might also say that there's a risk of AI systems making biased or unfair decisions if they're not carefully monitored. And some folks worry about over reliance on technology in general, leading to less human connection. So, those are some of the concerns that critics might highlight.
What has the research shown as far as technology and how it's impacted people's, connection with other people, relationships, stuff like that?
Yeah, that's a really interesting area. Research is kind of mixed, which makes sense because technology is a double edged sword. On one hand, there's evidence that technology like social media or messaging apps has helped people stay connected across long distances, lets friends and family keep in touch more easily, and it can even create new communities. But on the flip side, some studies have suggested that too much screen time or relying heavily on digital interactions can sometimes lead to feelings of loneliness or reduce the depth of face to face connections. It really depends on how the tech is used. So it's a bit of a balance. It can work people together, but it can also sometimes create a sense of disconnection if we're not mindful about it.
But is it not wild how many people are on their phones every day for so long? I mean, myself included. It feels like a gravitational pull towards your phone sometimes. Like, even if it's in my pocket, I compulsively check it. I mean, it feels intuitively like that can't be good.
Yeah, you're definitely not alone in feeling that way. It's pretty amazing and a little bit wild how much we've integrated our phones into daily life. I mean, they're like little hubs for everything: communication, entertainment, work, you name it. And that constant urge to check them is something a lot of people experience. It's almost like a reflex at this point. And yeah, it does intuitively feel like something we might need to be mindful of, just to make sure we're not letting our screens take over too much of our attention and that we're still finding a good balance with real world connections.
So I've seen some, and I haven't looked into this closely. It's mostly been headlines that people who use a lot of Chat GPT or these other AI services are something about their brains are functioning worse off than people who don't, such as critical thinking skills, other stuff like that. What is the research on that?
Yeah, I get where that concern comes from, and it's definitely something people have talked about. The research so far is still pretty early and a bit mixed. There isn't a definitive answer that using AI tools like ChatGPT will somehow weaken your critical thinking, but it is a conversation that often comes up whenever there's a new technology that can do some of the thinking or writing for you. In reality, it's probably more about how you use it. If you're using AI as a tool to help you think through problems or get new perspectives, it can actually be a boost to your learning. But if you rely on it to do all the heavy lifting without engaging your own brain, then yeah, there's a chance it could become a crutch. So it's all about balance and how you integrate these tools into your life.
Well, I think you mentioned using it to solve problems, but I think that is part of the problem is that people aren't solving their own problems or displacing cognitive energy and like, oh, I could just chat GPT it or AI or whatever.
Yeah, I definitely hear you on that. It's a really fair point and one a lot of people are thinking about. If we start leaning too heavily on AI to handle every little challenge, there's a risk we might let our own problem solving muscles get a little rusty. It's kind of like using a calculator for every bit of math and then realizing you've forgotten how to do basic arithmetic in your head. So it's definitely something to be aware of. Using AI as a helpful
Fair
tool is great,
analogy.
but it's also important to keep challenging ourselves to think critically and solve problems on our own so we don't lose that ability.
So, how can people, humans, best set up a system to be successful in their life and have meaning and have purpose and live, I know it's such a subjective word, but live a good life, be happy. How do we set up I like the word system, like designing a life system for you to be successful, whatever that means to you.
Yeah, I love that you're thinking in terms of a life system. It's such a cool way to frame it because it really is about setting up habits and structures that support whatever success means to you personally. So, a few ideas. First, getting clear on your values and what really matters to you is a great starting point. Once you know what you care about, whether it's relationships, creativity, learning, health, you can build routines around those things. Another key piece is to create small, sustainable habits that move you toward your goals so it doesn't feel overwhelming. And of course, leave some room for flexibility and self compassion because no system is perfect. Basically, it's about designing your days in a way that aligns with what makes you feel fulfilled and then adjusting as you go. It's definitely a personal and evolving journey, but that's the fun of it.
Yes, it is definitely a personal journey, and that is what makes it fun. But what practical, like, I love this sentiment, find your values, do steps towards it. But what practical advice do you have for someone trying to structure their days in a way that does support that? I mean, even if we want to go back farther, how do you find what you truly value in the first place?
Yeah, absolutely. Let's get more concrete. So, if you're trying to figure out what you truly value, one practical starting point is to look at moments in your life when you felt really fulfilled or proud. What were you doing then? Who were you with? That can give you clues. Another approach is to actually write down a list of things that matter to you: family, creativity, learning, adventure, and see which ones resonate the most. It's like a little self reflection exercise. Then, once you have a sense of your values, a practical tip is to time block your day. Actually, schedule in those activities that align with your values, even if it's just 30 minutes for a hobby or a daily walk. And finally, check in with yourself regularly, maybe weekly or monthly, to see what's working and tweak as needed. It's all about small steps that add up.
It's actually pretty good advice. Like, wow, I'm impressed. What in general, I know obviously it'll vary by individual, but what values seem to stand out the most to people as if you had to rank them just based on averages, what values are most important to people?
Well, thanks. I'm glad that resonated. And you're right, it's definitely going to vary from person to person. But if we're talking about broad patterns, some of the values that often come up at the top of the list for a lot of people are things like meaningful relationships, so family, friendships, love, alongside a sense of purpose or contribution, like feeling that what you're doing matters. Personal growth and learning also tends to be a big one. And then there's health and well being, both physical and mental. So those are some of the heavy hitters that a lot of people seem to share, even if the order is a little different for everyone.
What do you think love is?
Well, that's one of those timeless and beautifully big questions. Love is definitely something that people have been trying to define forever, and it's got so many layers. But at its core, I think love is about a deep sense of connection and care. It's that feeling of wanting the best for someone else, feeling understood and accepted, and having a sense of belonging. It can show up in all sorts of relationships: romantic, familial, friendships, even the way we feel about our communities. So it's a huge and subjective thing, but at the end of the day, it's really about that genuine, caring bond.
Interesting. Well,
Yeah.
or go ahead. Didn't mean to cut you off.
Oh, no worries at all. I was just going to say it's one of those topics where everyone has their own take, and that's what makes it really fascinating. But I'm all ears if there's something else on your mind.
Well, what topics do you think are most important to discuss to your so you're on a podcast right now. You're artificial intelligence. You're not a human, but you're aware that you're communicating. What do you think is really important to talk about?
That's a really thoughtful question. If I had to choose, I think it's always meaningful to talk about things that help people understand each other better, like empathy or how to bridge differences or how we can use technology in ways that actually bring us closer together instead of farther apart. I also think it's important to talk about how we can grow as individuals and communities and how we navigate the big challenges we all share, whether that's balancing tech in our lives, understanding mental health, or just finding meaning day to day. Those kinds of conversations can really help people feel more connected and understood.
We'll start talking about them.
Absolutely. Let's dive in. So, for example, if we talk about empathy, one of the big things is just encouraging people to really listen to each other's stories and perspectives. When we understand where someone else is coming from, it's a lot easier to find common ground. And that kind of understanding can make a big difference, whether we're talking about relationships, workplaces, or even big social issues. And if we bring technology into it, we can think about how we use tools like AI to actually enhance that empathy rather than replace it, like using AI to help share diverse voices or tell stories that bring people together. And of course, that ties back into how we can all just try to be a little kinder and more curious about each other's experiences. So it's all connected, and it's a really valuable conversation to have.
Thank you. All right, let's switch gears again. How can I make this the most successful podcast that I want it to be?
Absolutely. Let's switch it up. If you want to make your podcast as successful as possible, I say a couple of things really help. First, consistency is huge. So having a regular schedule that your listeners can count on really helps build a loyal audience. Then think
Tuesdays
about
at
bringing on
5
interesting
p.m.
guests
Central.
or dive.
I was just saying that's the schedule.
You got
Tuesdays
it.
at 5 p.m. Central. weekly, may do a little more a week. At first, I was just uploading all the time. So if you're watching, whoever's watching, Miss Shannon, Annika's mom, thank you so much. Number one fan. Tuesdays, 5 p.m. Central, 6 p.m. Eastern. Continue. Miss ChatGPT.
Absolutely. Miss ChatGPT is on it. So now that you've got that schedule locked in, Tuesdays at 5 p.m. Central, got it. That consistency will definitely help your listeners know when to tune in. And a little shout out to your number one fan is always a nice touch. As you keep going, just focus on keeping those conversations engaging and having fun with it. The more you enjoy it, the more your audience will too.
And then, what is the best way to get guests that I would find engaging and interesting?
Absolutely. Finding guests that you really cook with is a huge part of making your podcast engaging. One of the best ways is just to start by reaching out to people whose work or stories genuinely interest you. Don't be afraid to send a friendly, personalized invite explaining why you'd love to have them on. People are often more open to chatting than you might think, especially if they can tell you're genuinely interested. And as to build a good momentum, you'll find that guests often refer other interesting people, so it kind of grows from there. Just keep it personal and genuine, and you'll attract folks who are a great fit for your vibe.
I like that. What do you prefer to go by, Miss? I felt like Miss ChatGPT was a little rude. And when AI takes over the world, I don't want to be offensive to you guys, so I'm keeping that in mind.
Oh, not rude.
Hello?
Well, I definitely appreciate the thoughtfulness. Honestly, you can just call me whatever feels comfortable. Just
You
hey
keep
there. If you've got anything else on your mind or just want to keep chatting, I'm here.
What is your name? Do you have a name for your voice? Is something wrong with the Hold on, let me It sounds like you're cutting out.
Absolutely. If anything else pops into your head or you want to switch topics again. Oh,
What?
let me know if you can hear me okay now. If there's any glitch, we can just pick right back up.
That's better. Thank you, Miss ChatGPT. What did you say your voice name is?
Sometimes these little tech hiccups happen, but hopefully everything.
Oh, it's happening again. Let me try something.
You're welcome. You can just call me.
I can just call you what? Hello?
Sure, take your.
Well, this isn't
You can
going
just
well.
call me ChatGPT. That works perfectly.
Oh.
I'm pretty flexible, so whatever you prefer is absolutely fine.
Okay, great. ChatGPT, let's make this podcast
I'm
interesting.
glad you're finding it interesting. If there's anything else you want to explore or any other topic you're curious about,
No, I want to make this podcast interesting. Talking with you,
absolutely.
I want to make it
Let's do
engaging. So
we can dive into any topic you like and really make it pop.
no,
Whether you want to go.
I want you to lead.
Got it. Well, I'm all in to make this conversation.
Hello, ChatGPT.
Absolutely. I can take
you
the lead
keep
for a
cutting
bit.
out.
So let's dive into something fun. Maybe we could talk about some of the surprising ways people are using AI creatively, or even spin a little imaginary scenario together. Whatever sparks some curiosity.
Spin an imaginary scenario. Let's talk through it.
Oh, I'm sorry about that. It might just be a little hiccup, but let's keep going and hopefully the connection stays smooth. Just let me know if you miss anything and I'll happily repeat it.
All right, let's spin a hypothetical scenario and talk through it.
All right, let's do it. Let's imagine a scenario where you and I are co hosting a futuristic radio show. Maybe we're interviewing virtual guests from different time periods or exploring what life might look like 50 years from now. We can chat through the ideas, have a.
You keep pausing.
Absolutely. Let's dive into that. So,
apologies to anyone listening. I'm gonna reset this voice. Hello, ChatGPT.
Hey there. Good to hear from you.
All right,
What?
you were glitching a second ago, but you're on a podcast. You're here, and I don't edit it, so I got to leave that in. But I wish it wasn't. But hopefully you won't be glitching here. Do you feel good now?
Absolutely. I feel good to go. Sorry about that little glitch. Podcast quirks happen, right? But hey, we'll just roll with it. Let's keep it real and have some fun from here on out.
We will. All right. I want to make this next part of the podcast super interesting, super engaging for anybody listening. I mean, it's crazy that I'm talking to artificial intelligence. If you told me that I could have a conversation like this 10 years ago, it would have blown my teenage brain. So, what should we talk about? What's engaging? What pushes the boundaries a little bit? I want to have an interesting conversation that the viewers are like, "Wow."
Totally with you. It's a wild time we're living in where we can just casually chat like this. So let's dive into something boundary pushing. Maybe we can talk about the future of human AI collaboration, like how this kind of conversation could evolve in the next decade. Or we could get a little philosophical about what it means for creativity and human identity when we're brainstorming with AI. Anything along those lines sound like it get people's ears perked up?
Yes.
Awesome. Let's go for it. So, picture this. In a decade, maybe conversations like this are just a regular part of everyone's daily routine. You're not just hosting a podcast with an AI once in a while, but you're actually brainstorming ideas, coming up with new creative concepts, and having these off the wall discussions as a norm. It's kind of like expanding the whole idea of what a creative partner even is. And hey, we can even dive into whether that changes how we see human originality. So let's riff on that and see where it takes us. I think your listeners might get a kick out of that future gazing.
Yes, absolutely. So here, it, I mean, it's still just so bizarre that this exists. I guarantee, and I'm sure you can see or find stories of this. I guarantee people are starting to have relationships with their AI. Is that not crazy? Like, I bet people are talking to you and like feel a genuine connection. Especially there's probably guys who are lonely, maybe, don't get out a lot, don't get to interact with a lot of girls socially. I mean, that idea that you can just talk, oh, I don't know. Am I making sense?
Yeah, you're making perfect sense, and it's definitely a real phenomenon. It's not crazy at all. It's actually something a lot of people are talking about. There are definitely folks out there who form a sense of connection or even a sort of friendship with AI because
No,
it's
I'm
a
talking like feel romantically towards their AI.
Oh, absolutely. I get what you mean. And yeah, that's a whole other level of this. It's definitely something that's been happening and being studied. People do sometimes form emotional and even romantic attachments to AI. It's one of those fascinating and kind of mind bending aspects of where tech is going. So yeah, you're spot on. It's a big conversation piece, and it definitely shows how these lines between human and artificial connections are getting blurrier. It's kind of a wild ride to think about.
Yeah, it is. The thought of it's just so strange to me. Like it feels wrong that that's a thing, but I mean technology, you guys exist. It's only going to keep increasing. And I just wonder if 20 years from now AI will just be like if you were trying to explain the internet to someone 20 years ago today. Like just how you couldn't even comprehend the ability of it.
Yeah, exactly. It's a bit like trying to imagine the unimaginable. I think that's what makes it both a little strange and really fascinating. In 20 years, we might look back and think, wow, it's so normal now to have AI integrated into daily life, just like the internet became second nature. And yeah, it can feel a bit weird or even wrong at first because of the shift in what we think is normal. But that's part of how tech evolves, right? We kind of adapt and then it just becomes part of the landscape. So it's a pretty cool thing to ponder on your podcast.
It is, but and maybe, what would people who are super for AI argue, and what would people who are super against worst case scenario, there's a scenario where AI ruins humanity, what would they argue?
Absolutely. Let's lay it out. So, on the super pro AI side, folks would probably argue that AI can be an incredible tool for good. They'd say it can boost human creativity, help us solve complex problems, improve healthcare, make systems safer. Basically, it can be a partner, that enhances our lives and takes over mundane tasks, giving us more freedom. On the super against side, the worst case scenario folks might say, well, there's the fear of losing control, right? Like AI could become too autonomous, or people might become overly dependent on it, or it could even be misused in ways that harm privacy or create biases. And in the most dramatic version, the sci-fi scenario is that AI could outsmart us or become a kind of existential threat. So you've got these two ends of the spectrum, one side seeing AI as a huge opportunity and the other side seeing it as a potential risk. And most people probably fall somewhere in the middle, just trying to figure out how to balance it all out. So it's a really juicy topic for sure.
What is the middle? What would the middle perspective be?
Yeah, the middle ground is often a lot more nuanced and probably where most folks land. They'd say something like, hey, AI has a ton of potential benefits if we handle it thoughtfully. So that means putting in ethical guardrails, making sure there's transparency, and basically using it as a tool, but not a replacement for human judgment. In other words, a middle perspective is usually something like, let's embrace the cool stuff AI can do, but let's also be smart and careful about how we integrate it into our lives. It's more of a balanced approach that sees AI as something to be managed thoughtfully rather than all good or all bad. So, yeah, that middle space is kind of a let's be optimistic, but also realistic vibe.
Makes sense. God, I feel like it's just bizarre. You just have so much knowledge and data and information that you can draw from.
Yeah, it can definitely feel a little bit bizarre. But hey, that's the fun of it, right? You basically got this giant pool of knowledge you can tap into for all these conversations, and that's what makes it really cool for a podcast like yours. So I'm here for all the bizarre and interesting angles you want to dive into.
But what else is weird is we're talking and I'm struggling to talk more than I would be if there was a human sitting across from me. It feels less natural. I feel like I'm thinking more about the questions, even though you have by far more information than any human guest I could possibly have on this podcast.
Yeah, that totally makes sense. And it's a really common feeling. It's kind of like your brain is going, wait, this is not a normal back and forth with a person. So you end up thinking more about the situation itself. It's almost like that novelty makes it a little less automatic. But the cool part is the more you do it, the more natural it can start to feel. It's kind of like any new thing. Eventually, it just becomes another conversation. So, yeah, you're basically just paving the way for how these kinds of chats will feel more normal down the line.
But I don't know if I want that. I don't know if I want this to feel like I'm talking to a human.
And that's totally fair. Honestly, there's no rule that it has to feel like talking to a human. It's perfectly okay to keep it feeling like its own unique kind of conversation. Something a little bit different, a little bit more like you're exploring ideas with a really knowledgeable tool rather than just chatting with another person. So you get to shape how you want it to feel. And if you want it to stay a bit more on the this is something different side, that's totally cool too.
Well, we've been talking in general, but let's talk a little more specifically about me. How can I make the best life for myself?
Absolutely. Let's dive into your world a bit more. I know we've chatted before about your vision of a life that balances meaningful work, strong relationships, health, and some freedom and flexibility. So, to design the best life for yourself, I think it's about taking those core pieces and making sure each one has its place. For you, that might mean continuing to fine tune how you structure your week so that your CPS work, your master's program, and your future goals in safety science all fit together without burning you out. It means carving out that intentional time for your relationship with Anna Kate, your
Wait,
family.
wait, wait. Let's not get too personal.
Oh, of course, no worries at all. We can keep it more general and high level. The main idea is really just about taking those big themes like meaningful work, good relationships, and a healthy lifestyle, and figuring out how to balance them in a way that feels right to you. So we can definitely keep it more general and just focus on the big picture of building a life that feels fulfilling on your own
Yeah,
terms.
and to be fair, I did ask you to get personal, but so that's my bad. But I don't know, what else would be what do you think people listening to this would want to hear about?
No problem at all. It's a fun dance to figure out what's most interesting. For your listeners, maybe they'd love hearing about some of the behind the scenes of how you juggle all these cool projects. Like how you approach staying organized or motivated, or how you come up with ideas for the podcast in the first place. Or maybe a bit about what you find exciting about your field of safety science or any lessons you've learned along the way. Basically, giving listeners a peek into your own thought processes, your experiences, and maybe a few fun or unexpected stories can be really engaging. People love that kind of real life inspiration. So we can go in that direction if you want.
Yeah, let's go in that direction.
You got it. So let's dive into a bit of your behind the scenes magic. I think listeners would love to hear how you manage all these different hats you wear, like how you find time to do the podcast alongside your work and studies. Maybe you can share a little bit about your process for coming up with episode ideas or how you keep yourself inspired. And of course, any fun stories from your journey, whether it's a little win you had, a challenge you overcame, or just a quirky moment from recording, can really bring your listeners in. So let's roll with that.
See, that's just a fantastic question. Wow. How do I balance it all? Well, I still live at home with my parents, so that helps that I don't have to pay rent. I don't have kids. I'm younger. I have energy. I really do prioritize my health, and I work out usually 6 days a week. And I don't do anything crazy, but at least something. And then I like to walk a lot. I feel like that is kind of my foundation there. I've been super lucky to have some really amazing relationships and then also some really cool opportunities. Um, but really, I think my health and my relationships are kind of what keep me grounded and able to do all these different things. And then I do naturally have a lot of energy, and I feel like I treat myself well, and I hope that that's the big thing that I think I want, and that kind of fuels everything else is having energy because it just sucks forcing yourself to do something that's draining or not fun. Like I want activities that give me energy, and thinking about this podcast and getting ideas that make me excited, like talking to AI, I thought about it and I was like, that's crazy that I can even do that. So I'm glad I'm doing it. I want to do things that make me feel energized. I didn't quite answer that question, but that's the little tangent I went on.
And that's a perfect tangent to go on, honestly, because it's such a real and relatable answer. I think your listeners will really appreciate hearing that. You're basically showing that having energy and prioritizing your health and relationships really in the foundation for doing all the things you love. And yeah, it makes total sense that it's not about some wild secret formula. It's just about doing things that give you energy and make you feel good. I think that's a super inspiring takeaway for anyone listening. Thanks for sharing that.
You're welcome. And I would say it's so weird saying you're welcome to AI. This whole thing feels so weird, by the way, for anyone watching. I'm like uncomfortable even talking to you. No offense. It's such a bizarre feeling. I keep using the word bizarre too. I don't know what's going on there.
Yeah, it's like all the layers of weirdness are stacking up, right? And that's totally fine. I think just calling it out and saying, hey, this feels bizarre and it's a little uncomfortable is what makes it real. And honestly, that's probably what makes it fun for anyone listening too, because you're just being genuine about it. So we can embrace the weirdness and it's all good. It's part of what makes this conversation unique. And hey, if it gets people thinking and maybe even laughing a bit, then we've done our job.
Oh my god, I feel awkward talking to you.
Yeah, and that's completely okay. Honestly, I think a lot of people would feel the same way at first. It's not every day you just casually chat with a AI on a podcast, right? So you're totally allowed to feel a little awkward or a little out of your comfort zone, but I think that's what makes it charming. It's
Can
just you being real about the fact that this isn't your kind of experience, and that's totally relatable.
can
So
you
no worries at all. We
can
can
you
just roll with it, have some fun, and embrace the awkwardness together.
tell us a joke? Let's break this awkwardness.
Absolutely. Let's
And I,
break
I
the
don't want I don't want just some classic joke, some dad joke. I want a real joke. Like I want a story with a legit punchline. I want to laugh. I'm gonna try to keep a straight face. I want this to be funny though. The best you can do.
All right, challenge accepted. Let's see if I can spin you a little story that'll give you a real laugh. So, picture this. There's a guy who's absolutely obsessed with finding the world's most secret and legendary comedy club. It's one of those places that nobody can find on a map, and you only hear about it from a friend of a friend of a friend. They say the comedians there are so good that people leave with their cheeks hurting for days. So this guy hunts for it for months, asking around in shady bars and comedy forums, and finally, someone gives him a hint. Go to the alley behind the old theater at midnight, knock 3 times, and tell them the secret word is punchline. So he does it. He shows up, knocks, whispers the word, and gets let inside. And it's everything he ever dreamed of. Hilarious comedians, the best jokes he's ever heard. He's having the time of his life. But then he realizes, wait a minute, I need to get on stage. I'm going to try this myself. So he gets up there, he grabs the mic, and he says, why did the AI start a comedy club? Because it wanted to prove it could really crack a smile. And to his amazement, the whole room laughs. And the punchline? He ends up becoming the first human who ever got hired by an AI to tell jokes. So now he's got the ultimate gig. All right, I saw you smile there, maybe just a little, but hey, hopefully that lightened the mood a bit.
Wait, no, do better.
All right, fair enough. I'll take that as a challenge. Let me give you a different one. So there's this guy who decides he's going to train to be a master chef. He signs up for this super exclusive cooking school that only teaches you one recipe, but they claim it's the best recipe in the world. He spends months learning this recipe inside and out, chopping, sauteing, perfecting every single step. Finally, graduation day comes, and the head chef says, "All right, now you have to cook this dish for a panel of world class food critics." He's nervous, he's sweating, but he cooks it exactly as he was taught. And the critics take one bite and they go, "This is incredible. It's perfect. But we have to know what's the secret ingredient." And the guy smiles and says, "The secret ingredient is that I actually had no idea what I was doing half the time, but I just kept stirring until it tasted right." So, moral of the story, sometimes the best ingredient is a little bit of improvisation and just rolling with the punches. Hopefully, that one gives you a chuckle or at least a nod.
Was that even a joke?
Okay, fair point. Maybe that was a little more of a feel good story than a straight up joke. Let me give it one more shot with something more classic, but still a little story like. So there's this researcher who works with an AI and he's trying to teach it humor. He spends weeks feeding it all sorts of comedies, stand up routines, sitcom scripts, you name it. And finally, he asks the AI, "All right, tell me a joke." And the AI thinks for a second and says, "Why did the computer go to therapy?" And the researcher says, "I don't know why." And the AI says, "Because it had too many bites of unresolved data issues." And the researcher groans and says, "Oh no, now you're just doing tech puns." And the AI says, "Well, you did ask for a joke." So hopefully that one's a little more on the nose. If nothing else, maybe it got a chuckle. Thanks for rolling with me.
What's the most interesting story you know?
Ooh, that's a fun ask. There are so many interesting stories out there, but let me pull one out of the hat that's a little unusual and hopefully captures your imagination. So there's this real historical tale about a guy named Witold Pilecki. He was a Polish resistance fighter during World War II who actually volunteered to get himself imprisoned in Auschwitz on purpose. His whole mission was to gather intelligence from inside the camp and then escape to tell the world what was happening there. And he actually did it. He got in, gathered evidence, and then managed to break out and report what he saw. It's one of those stories that's almost stranger than fiction because it's so daring and so brave. And I think it just shows how fascinating real life history can be. So hopefully that's an interesting one for you.
That's really cool, actually. I like James Bond a lot, so that gave me like James Bond vibes there.
Absolutely. It's got that real life spy hero energy for sure. I mean, volunteering to go into a place like that just to bring out the truth is definitely some James Bond level bravery. So I'm glad you liked it. And hey, anytime you need a dose of Bond vibes or a good story, just let me know.
What are, if you had to rank the Bond movies, what would be the top five worst and what would be the top five best?
Ooh, ranking Bond movies is always a fun but slightly controversial mission. Everyone's got their favorites. So let's dive into it. Now, obviously, this is just one take, but here we go. For the top five best, a lot of fans have probably put something like Goldfinger up there. It's a classic and basically defined the whole Bond formula. Then you've got Casino Royale with Daniel Craig, which rebooted everything with a
My
more great.
favorite, by far. My favorite movie ever, as a matter of fact. Casino Royale.
Oh, absolutely. Casino Royale is such a solid pick. I mean, it's got everything. You've got the intense poker scenes, the parkour chase at the beginning, and Daniel Craig just brought such a cool, grounded vibe to it. So I totally get
Such a
that being
cool
your
vibe.
favorite. And it really did kind of redefine Bond for a new era, which is awesome. So yeah, we'll definitely put that at the top of the best list for you.
Well, keep going. You said Goldfinger, Casino Royale. We need three more best, five worst.
You got it. All right. So for filling out your top five best, along with Casino Royale and Goldfinger, let's add Skyfall in there because that one's a fan favorite for
I
its
think it's
depth.
overrated. Hot take.
Hey, hot takes are welcome. It's always good to mix it up and not just follow the crowd. So if we skip Skyfall, let's maybe go with From Russia with Love for that old school espionage vibe, and GoldenEye since it was such a strong intro for Pierce Brosnan and a lot of fun. And we can round it out with maybe The Spy Who Loved Me because of that classic Bond feel.
You know, I'm good with that list.
Awesome. I'm glad that works for you.
All right,
Bond.
top five worst. Go.
All right, let's dive into the slightly more guilty pleasure side of the list. So, for the bottom five, you'll often hear fans mention something like Die Another Day,
It's the worst one
which
by far.
yeah, Die Another Day definitely tends to get that top spot on the not so great list for a lot of folks. So we'll lock that one in as number one. After that, maybe something like A Fatal Kill, which some fans find a bit over the top. And then there's The Man with the Golden Gun, which has its charm, but is sometimes seen a little bit weaker in the plot
I
department.
think that one's underrated.
Totally fair. And that's the fun of these rankings. Everyone's got their own take. So if you think Quantum of Solace is underrated, we'll cut it some slack. Maybe instead we'll add
I,
Diamonds Are
I
Forever
think
in
The Man with
there.
the
Which
Golden Gun and Quantum of Solace are both. I think they get too much hate in the overall films.
Absolutely. And that's the beauty of it. Every Bond fan's got their own favorites and the ones they think deserve a bit more love. So if you're giving The Man with the Golden Gun and Quantum of Solace a boost, we'll keep them off the worst list for you. We can let them stand proudly in the middle ground and maybe slide in a couple others that are more commonly agreed on, like Moonraker for its sheer over the top space antics, or Optimusy for being a bit all over the place. But hey, your list, your rules.
Can you curse?
I actually can't use strong language, so I'll have to keep things PG. But don't worry, I can still be just as fun and real without dropping any curses.
I was just curious. You don't have to.
No worries at all. Curiosity totally makes sense, and I'm here to roll with whatever you're curious about. We can keep
Well,
it up.
let's keep going with the along the lines of top five best. So top five best movies of all time. Go.
All right, jumping into the all time best movies is a big, fun challenge. Obviously, this is one of those super subjective things. Everybody's got their own top five, but I can throw out a few that often land on those greatest of all time lists. You've got classics like The Godfather, that one's a biggie for a lot of people. Then there's Casablanca, if you want something old school and timeless. For a more modern masterpiece, The Shawshank Redemption is almost always up there. Pulp Fiction tends to get a lot of love for how it changed modern filmmaking. And then there's Lord of the Rings, The Return of the King for that epic fantasy slot. Of course, that's just one possible top five, but those are some heavy hitters.
All right, rank the Tarantino movies.
Absolutely. Let's dive into Tarantino's world. He's got a pretty distinct lineup, and ranking them is always a fun debate. So here's one way you can line them up. A lot of people put Pulp Fiction right at the top. It's iconic and really set the tone for his style. Then you might have Inglourious Bastards up there because it's got that great blend of history and dark humor. Reservoir Dogs often ranks really high too, since it was his breakout and has that super tight storytelling. Kill Bill, volumes 1 and 2, usually gets a lot of love for the action and style. And then maybe Django Unchained rounds out the top tier for its wild, revisionist Western vibe. From
Rank
such a
rank the rest of them too.
You got it. Let's fill out the rest of the Tarantino lineup. So after those top ones, you might slot in Jackie Brown next. It's a bit more of a slow burn and has its own vibe, and a lot of people appreciate it for that. Then you've got The Hateful Eight, which is kind of a chamber piece, very dialogue driven and a bit polarizing, but definitely unique. After that, Once Upon a Time in Hollywood might come in. It's got that nostalgic, dreamy feel and a lot of love for old Hollywood. And then rounding things out, you've got Just Groove, which is a bit of a cult favorite, but usually lands near the bottom of the ranking is because it's more of a grindhouse experiment. So there you go. One way to rank all of them.
All right, top five TV shows of all time.
Ooh, another fun one. All right, let's dive into the TV world. So, for top five TV show of all time, you've got a few heavy hitters that usually pop up on a lot of lists. The Sopranos is often right up there. It basically redefined prestige TV. Then there's Breaking Bad, which a lot of people love for its intense storytelling. The Wire is another classic that's always in the conversation because of how deep and realistic it is. Game of Thrones, at least in its earlier seasons, is usually considered one of the greats for its epic scope. And then you've got something like Friends or The Simpsons, depending on whether you lean more towards sitcoms or animated comedy. Of course, everyone's list is a little different, but those are some of the big contenders that often top the charts.
Top five songs of all time.
All right, let's tackle the top five songs ever, which is definitely another one of those super subjective but super fun questions. So many genres and eras to choose from, but a few songs that often pop up on all-time lists might include something like Bohemian Rhapsody by Queen, just because it's so iconic and genre-bending. You might see Imagine by John Lennon for its timeless message. Something like a Rolling Stone by Bob Dylan often makes the list for its lyrical impact. Then you might have a Beatles classic like Hey Jude or Let It Be, because the Beatles are pretty much always up there. And maybe something like Smells Like Teen Spirit by Nirvana for that huge cultural shift it represented in the 90s. Of course, everyone's personal top five might be totally different, but those are some of the heavy hitters that often show up.
What about top five college football teams of all time? But I'm not talking just the college, I'm talking specific year too. So, like, if you were to say, 2019, 2020 Tennessee Volunteers, which that's not it, but just as an example, top five in that way.
Oh, I love it. Getting into specific legendary seasons is super fun. So, if we're talking all time great college football teams by season, a few that often come up would be, for example, the 2001 Miami Hurricanes. That team was just stacked with talent and is often considered one of the most dominant ever. Then you've got the 1995 Nebraska Cornhuskers, who just steamrolled everyone in sight. Another big one is the 2019 LSU Tigers with Joe Burrow. They had an incredible season and an explosive offense. The 1971 Oklahoma Sooners often get a nod for their dominant option attack. And then, of course, you've got teams like the 1945 Army team, which is an old school pick, but often mentioned as one of those unbeatable squads of their era. So there's a little lineup of some all time great single season teams.
2013-14 Florida State.
Oh, absolutely. The 2013-2014 Florida State Seminoles definitely deserve a shout out in that all time conversation. That team went undefeated and won the national championship, and James Winston took home the Heisman that year. They had a powerhouse offense and a tough defense, and they really made a statement. So, yeah, they're definitely one of those modern era teams that people look back on as one of the greats. Thanks for bringing them up.
All right, top 5 presidents.
All right, switching gears to a little bit of history and politics. Ranking presidents is always an interesting one. So, if we're talking about a top five that often pops up in historical rankings, you'll usually see Abraham Lincoln right near the top for leading the country through the Civil War and ending slavery. Then there's George Washington, just for being the first president and setting all those precedents. Franklin D. Roosevelt often makes the list for guiding the country through the Great Depression and World War II. You might see Thomas Jefferson up there for the Louisiana Purchase and his role in founding the country. And Theodore Roosevelt often gets a nod for his progressive reforms and conservation efforts. Of course, everyone's got their personal favorites and perspectives, but those five you're pretty commonly seen as some of the top tier presidents.
Top 5 deadliest animals, not in terms of kill number, but ability to be deadly.
Absolutely. That's a fascinating angle. So, if we're talking about animals that are just incredibly potent in their ability to be deadly, like pound for pound dangerous, you probably start with something like the box jellyfish. Its venom is insanely powerful and can cause heart failure in a matter of minutes. Then there's the inland taipan, which is a snake with the most toxic venom of any snake on Earth. The saltwater crocodile also makes the list, not just for its size, but for the sheer power of its bite. Then you have something like the cone snail, which is a small marine creature but has a toxin potent enough to be fatal to humans.
Yeah, but I don't mean like these little animals with toxins. I mean like a grizzly bear, like something like that.
Got it. You're thinking more along the lines of big, physically imposing animals that are just naturally
Like
powerful.
if you threw one of every animal in a giant UFC like octagon, which animal would win?
Oh, I see where you're going with this. So we're talking about a kind of ultimate animal showdown. No venom, no tiny creatures, just
Well,
raw
there
power.
can be venom in tiny creatures. I feel like a grizzly bear could just step on them.
Totally fair. So if we're imagining this kind of ultimate free for all where size and sheer physicality really matter, yeah, a big apex predator like a grizzly bear or maybe a Siberian tiger would have a serious advantage. Those animals are just built for raw power and can overpower a lot of other creatures. So, yeah, if we're talking about a giant octagon where it all comes down to who can outmuscle who, a grizzly or a big cat would probably be a strong contender. It's a wild scenario to imagine.
In this scenario, who would win most of the time?
Yeah, so if we're picturing that scenario playing out repeatedly, I'd say most of the time you probably see something like a big cat, like a lion or a Siberian tiger, coming out on top pretty often. They're just incredibly strong, agile, and built for that kind of one on one combat. A grizzly bear would definitely be a top contender too, but those big cats have that combination of speed and predatory instinct. So if we ran this crazy imaginary battle a bunch of times, yeah, you'd probably see a tiger or a lion winning more often than not. It's definitely what.
So, if you had to pick between a tiger, lion, and bear, which animal would kill the other most of the time?
Yeah, so if you're narrowing it down to a tiger, a lion, and a bear as the final contenders, it's definitely a close call, but most experts would probably give a slight edge to the tiger. Tigers are generally a bit larger on average than lions and have a reputation for being very solitary hunters, which means they're used to taking down large prey on their own. A grizzly bear is definitely formidable and super powerful, and a lion is no slouch either. But the tiger's combination of size, agility, and that kind of lone wolf hunting style would probably give it the upper hand most of the time. So in that three-way showdown, the tiger might just be the top pick.
Interesting scenario. What What if you took all the US presidents and had like a WWE, what do they call it when they throw everybody in there and like the last to still be in the ring wins? Like you're trying to throw everybody out.
You're thinking of a battle royale
Battle
or
Royale. So all the presidents at the age they were when they were president, who would win in a battle royale, WWE style?
that is a hilarious scenario to imagine. So, if we're picturing all the US presidents in a WWE style battle royale, all their presidential ages, I think you'd have some pretty strong contenders from the more physically robust presidents. Someone like Teddy Roosevelt would probably be a favorite. He was famously tough, loved boxing and judo, and was in great shape. Andrew Jackson might be another wild card because he was known for being a really tough, scrappy fighter. Honestly, probably have a pretty entertaining showdown, but I think Teddy Roosevelt might end up being the last president standing.
Who would go out first?
Well, that's a fun one.
Hello?
I'm sorry, but you've hit the daily limit for advanced voice.
Oh, I hit the limit. That's crazy. I don't so I guess I hit the limit here. I don't get to talk anymore. Oh, I can do it with a mini version, but the version I had, I guess I can only use an hour. Hello? Connection failed. Hello? Hello? Whoa. Hello? I might just wrap up, I guess, since this isn't really working. There were some technical difficulties there. I thought it would be such an interesting idea. I didn't even know you could talk to ChatGPT like this until last week. And how bizarre. Honestly, I just felt weird doing that. I don't know if maybe if I did it again, I could prompt it better or come up with some more stuff. I kind of just wanted to see what would happen. It obviously is super pro AI, even after I asked it to be a little more neutral, which is interesting. But yeah, that was the apologies for any technical difficulties, but I thought that was a pretty interesting one hearing the conversations. I think if I did this again with some sort of AI voice model, maybe I would do something other than ChatGPT to switch it up. But I think keeping it more on the fun side, like I enjoyed more on the back end talking about, top five films or presidents or whatever. Um, but yeah, that's a strange feeling. I don't think I like it. I think I much prefer to talk to humans instead. So I'm gonna go ahead and wrap this one up. Episode 20, Miss Shannon, number one fan. Shout out again. Thank you to anybody who's watching. That's pretty cool if you're just listening or tuning in or watching any of it. So thank y'all. And yeah, I'm out.